when I see communities that are like growing at crazy rates, you want like a sustainable growth where every week, sustainable amount of people coming in, adding value, and most importantly, not making the core experience worse for the original. So yeah, I think like it's totally okay to limit your growth in the early days, because I think that it'll help you really figure out what is your North Star.
We've got a super special guest here today on the Matt Gray Show, Greg Isenberg, the founder of Late Checkout, which is a product design agency, studio, and venture fund that designs, creates, and acquires community-based technology products. Known Greg for the better part of a decade now. He's an absolute legend when it comes to all things community. He is also an advisor to Reddit, TikTok. He's previously sold companies to Stumble Upon, which is founded by the founder of Uber, as well as WeWork. Greg, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's dive in. So, I mean, community is kind of all the rage these days as more and more people are looking to move from having an audience online to actually owning their community and having more rich one-to-one relationships with people. I've noticed over the last month alone, you and your team at Late Checkout are absolute machines when it comes to pumping out different experiments based on all the insights you're gleaning online and from the work you're doing with some of the best brands out there in the world. And so over the last month alone, and I'm sure there's more I'm missing, but you've launched Dispatch, the productized agency. You've launched You Probably Need a Robot, which is, in your words, this kind of like super niche community at the intersection of AI and productivity. How do you think about launching these new products, and how do you avoid shiny object syndrome?
Before I answer that, I want to clear one thing up, which is something that I see often online, which is people using the word community instead of audience. So and I know you know this, but the difference between an audience and a community is a very, very different thing. So I see an audience like a hotel. You go to a hotel, you check in, you're not getting to know all your neighbors. If you got to know all your neighbors at, every single floor, and you're going, up a 20 floor, Hilton, and you're knocking on doors, people would think that, you might be insane. But, when you move into an apartment building, it's, when I moved into this apartment building, like I got like a cake, like people were welcoming me, like we're in this together. The hotel is like an audience. There's value there. You come in and you come out. The apartment building is the community. When I live in Miami and there was a hurricane here, the community that like existed during that hurricane, everyone coming together, everyone, do you need anything? Can I help you? That's real community. So, yeah, I think that there's tons of value in audience, and I think there's tons of value in community, but I also, we think of them as really separate experiences. So when we're building products, we always think about what is the audience, what is the community, and what is the product. So using the example you gave, we launched something called You Probably Need a Robot.com. That's basically, how to use AI to boost productivity. The audience there, like I was the audience, my audience, so we picked me. Sometimes we work with other creators, but we picked me. We have a newsletter that people subscribe to, and that brings them into the free community where there's programming to learn about how do you put AI into your workflow. So how do we, to answer your question, how do we avoid shiny object syndrome? We have like pretty rigorous, when we start a project using an audience, a community, and product, we have pretty rigorous guardrails around like when to kill a project and when not to kill a project. So, we do have shiny object syndrome in the sense that we see a lot of opportunity, but we know really quickly when to kill a project.
Makes sense. So using the specific example of Dispatch, which is your sort of productized service business, helping people with unlimited design resources on a monthly basis. How do you kind of like decide that, okay, you have this idea, you're going to move forward now with launching this? Like what sort of insights have you gleaned in out of the thousands of things you could work on? Why that?
So we run a really profitable, like I would call it like more of a high end agency. So we partner with like the largest brands in the world to help be their innovation team and build new products, generate new revenue streams, and create community based products for them. But 99.9% of the leads that we get for late checkout, the agency, we don't do anything with. So because it's just not a fit, for that higher offering. So we started asking ourselves, what do we do with those leads? Number one. And number two, in a recessionary environment where people are trying to cut costs and make more money, what are the type of agency services that people are going to want? Well, they're going to want, if you've just laid off your design team, or if you're no longer hiring, you're still going to need social assets to be created, decks to be created, icons, websites, microsites, landing pages. But you might not be willing to pay six figures for a designer in San Francisco, only to leave you after 6 months. Mm-hmm. So for another shiny object. So we were like, hey, let's do an experiment for a productized agency, meaning like it's like a fixed fee basically for a monthly service. We only sell one service, unlimited design. And let's see, after 30 days, and we charge $5,000 a month. Can we get 3 clients in the first 30 days? Second month is 6 clients. Third is 9 clients. If we can't get 9 clients after 90 days, even though we're generating, call it $40,000 a month, which is, almost 500,000 of ARR, which is a ton of money, we will shut down that project. Granted, like that project is like the demand has been overwhelming. So we really had to strike a chord with it, but it's really tough to do. Like we've had to make really tough decisions with other projects where it was generating revenue, it was getting buzz, but we had to kill it.
Makes sense. I love that idea of sort of, in a way, sort of selling your sawdust. Like you have all these brands reaching out to you. You're working with like the most innovative, like most badass brands out there on the late checkout side. But then there's, as you say, 99.9% of these brands that you're just not able to serve prior to starting dispatch. And so now you have the ability to kind of take that excess demand of people knocking at your door, open up a new sort of productized service business and start serving those brands. And I like the idea of out the gate having the sort of success metrics that if it doesn't cross this hurdle in a certain time span, kind of removing the emotion from it, because we all know how hard it is to kill a project once you've started. Having those success metrics that, hey, doesn't hit this, despite what we think, despite whatever momentum, we got to just make the hard decision to kill it out the gate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really the hardest part is being unemotional with your products. So, we're human beings, we're emotional, especially if these are our babies when we put them out in the world. So it's really difficult to, and it's public too, right? Like we're using audiences to show, to post these products. So it's really tough to be like, hey, I tried this thing, didn't work out, I'm shutting it down, and you're letting people down. So I think that's really, really tough. But I think if you can do it, I think you end up focusing on the things that really matter. And to your first point around, using like this is a service that now kind of has more mass appeal. The way I see that is it's like the Uberification of the products that you build. So, Uber started off as a black car service in San Francisco. And then they, went, across the US and Canada and globally. And then they offered Uber X, which was like a more, a cheaper version. No longer do you have to spend $50 on a black car, a Lincoln Town Car. You're getting to spend, $7.50 and you're getting a Honda Civic, but you're still getting point A to point B. That opened up, a huge, opportunity for Uber, because now their total addressable market isn't just, bankers in suits in the financial district in San Francisco or on Wall Street who can afford these expensive rides, but it's your everyday person. And they even went further from UberX, and now they're like Uber Pool, which was, a product that was like, okay, essentially like the closest thing to public transportation for calling a car. So it's not uncommon to, for people thinking about building a product, there's two ways to think about building a product. Either think about what is the most luxury version of your product that you can create. How do you serve the top 0.1%? Or think about what is the product that I can build that has mass appeal. And I'll give examples. On one end, you have like the mass appeal is like your Justin Welsh, right? Or what you're doing, Matt. Like you sell a product, in the sub 200 or something dollar range, and Justin sells in the sub $200 range. It's like a few $100s. But on the high end, there's, like Cody Sanchez sells her for boring businesses. To buy a boring business, might cost, $4, $5, $6, $7, $8,000. And it just attracts a different, I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying that it attracts a different buyer. But the real opportunity is to move up and down the funnel as you learn more about who you're building for.
Yeah, I love that approach. In terms of, the reference there of, an audience, relating that to a hotel where people are going in and out of versus an apartment building where there's more of a sense of community. There's a hurricane, people are supporting one another. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how to move, say, an audience on Twitter, as an example, to a actual community. How do you kind of think about those key moments or specific strategies of moving a community from a platform like Twitter, but it could also be LinkedIn for some people, Instagram, maybe even YouTube, to an actual community?
Yeah, I think, firstly, I think people who take, let's say, Twitter or LinkedIn followers and turn them into, let's say, newsletter subscribers, like that's not a community. But what is a community? We have a test actually for coming out. What is a community? We call it the tribe test. And so tribe, T stands for togetherness. R stands for rituals. I stands for, what does I stand for? Let's see. I'm like blanking here. I think it stands for interaction.
That sounds about right.
I think it's interaction. Yeah, I think it's interaction. B stands for belonging, and E stands for engagement. I stands for identity, member identity.
Nice.
So, is there member identity? So it's thinking about how can you, apply like the tribe essentially to an experience. So, for us, let's just use the example of you probably need a robot just because it's fresh in my head. Mm-hmm. Like we had, posted on Twitter, and then we converted those people to a Discord where they had to put in their email address. Then the Discord had core experiences like we actually this morning just had a Twitter space where everyone was sharing what is the one AI tool that they that helped them today. And then through that, they develop like an identity, they can engage, there's belonging, there's togetherness. So there's all these things. So I think that, if you've got an audience and you're like, hey, how can I put this into more of a community? Think about what is a closed invite only experience that you can create digitally or physically. We know a lot of us resort to digital, but physical is, especially now, like there's a ton of opportunity to build like IRL experiences and the key is the price of entrance is your email address. So you subsidize it by your email address, and then you use the emails as a way to further nurture them along what David Spinks calls the community commitment curve. The community commitment curve is this idea that essentially you're bringing people to be more and more invested in the community. So for example, someone who is a newsletter subscriber is quote unquote less valuable than someone who wants to be a moderator of a Discord or who wants to throw events. So your job as a community designer and community manager is to think about how can I create experiences and product to support people through that journey.
And so when you're going and you're putting, you probably need a robot and releasing that to your audience on Twitter, driving people to, the community on Discord. Is your specific strategy there? Is it direct posting the Discord to Twitter? Is it driving people from the newsletter to a type form to the Discord community? Is it Twitter to type form to Discord? How do you kind of look at some of those key funnels, I guess, to that community? And what's sort of the entrance to get in? Like you've talked about an email. Is anyone able to get in? Or how do you kind of like to design your community so that there's a sense of, we all have a shared sort of values and goals of this community so that, you're not letting scrubs in?
Yeah. So I'll let you into like how I was thinking about this whole process. I started off by 3 or so weeks ago. I started off by tweeting out, would anyone be interested in like a free community to talk about AI and productivity? Like that's how it started. And then I put I tweeted it. I started getting a lot of replies. Once I started seeing a lot of replies, I added as a second tweet a type form. That was it. Got like 1,000 people or something like that. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. My next step was creating the community. At first, we let in a subset of that community. We had questions that we asked, and based on how they answered the question and based on like some research we did about people around like, do we think that they'd be a good founding member, which is another thing to consider. Who would be a good founding member to the community? We let in our founding members. Then we layered on the email newsletter. And why did we layer on the email newsletter? This is all in a matter of 3 weeks, by the way. So it just goes to show you like how fast things can move. We're like, hey, like we want the problem with Discord or Slack or some of these community platforms, and we've talked about this in the past, is like it's very difficult to get people to re-engage. So the newsletter is just a tool for us to surface interesting conversations that are happening on the Twitter Spaces, Discord, where we can, highlight some of our members and what they're saying, as well as just keep people up to date with like what the hell is going on, so that they're, as like going into a Discord or a Slack or whatever, it's like a bit overwhelming. So if we can like synthesize, that's huge. Then we said, you know what, we're going to let in anyone who joins. So we're at the stage where, our community was like, we want more people here. So we started letting them in. They told us, we listened to them and we started letting it in. Does that mean that we won't like create like segments and sub communities that are more private going forward? Like, I think we will likely, because like you need to have, in order to keep that tribe vibe, you do need to have these closed spaces, which is why we have like a private Twitter account, where we host Twitter Spaces. We have that because like we don't want everyone, on it. So that's how I've been thinking about it. And it's very much like you're learning in real time. Like when you're launching a community, you're learning in real time.
Yeah, I love that. I'm seeing that among some of the most successful founders, creators that I know, whether it's you building this, AI community, you probably need a robot, or, even folks like Dickie Bush, Nicholas Cole over at Ship 30 for 30, launching their ghostwriting course in a matter of like days. And same thing with a ChatGPT course they released. So that sort of rapid iteration, kind of developing that experimentation mindset versus a perfectionist mindset, and just putting things out there, learning from the community, and just then kind of letting the community speak. I'm curious, as you're sort of building your community now and, you're getting a bunch of different feedback, how are you balancing, community feedback versus what your gut or intuition are telling you? And how are you sort of co-creating these products over time with your community?
So I say that data informs, doesn't dictate. Some people are, they'll call themselves data driven. So they'll basically look at analytics plus voice of customer, meaning like what people are saying that they want, and they'll just completely go after the data and create products prioritized on data. That's like if, you had ChatGPT run your product, just looking at data. My belief is that if data is science, the art piece is the intuition that you build as a community leader or as a product person. And I think it's really important to listen to the community, but it's almost more important to synthesize what they're saying. So sometimes they say one thing, but what they really mean is another thing. Sometimes, so I think your job as the leader needs to be synthesis. So we're very much listening to what they are saying, but we're much more synthesizing, basically. We're synthesizing, and so I'd say it's like 70% synthesis and 30% gut.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like a lot of getting that community feedback is then sort of pattern recognition and also trying to search behind the words that are being said to like, what's the root cause that's going on? You may have customers that are asking you to build a faster horse, and that eventually you need to really be building a car. And so it's kind of trying to figure out and have that judgment, tune in the intuition, and you're listening to people, but trying to find the deeper meaning maybe behind what they're asking you for. I'm seeing, as there's more a rush for people to kind of figure out community and just a general demand out there, people trying to figure out, okay, is it Discord? Should I be going to school? Is Mighty Networks the move? Is it Circle? Should I be building my own? Is it WhatsApp? Is it Telegram? And I think some people, their heads start spinning with all these options. And I've done a lot of analysis. There's pros and cons to each of these. And inevitably with Founder OS, we went with school, and I'm really pleased with the decision. But like anything, hey, there's always trade-offs. I'm curious, how do you kind of look at that decision matrix as you're setting up a community versus even a paid community? And, with all the projects you have going on, what are some of the decisions you've made there?
I've been in this space for a really long time. And if you would have told me like in 2005 that in 2023, I wouldn't be able to point to one product to use, I would be like, you're lying. But the reality is, even in 2023, we're in a situation where there isn't one perfect product. And I think one of the reasons is that no two communities are equal, and there's no one size fits all product for that. But another reason is, consumer behaviors change so quickly. So for example, Twitter ads, Twitter spaces, all of a sudden, like, Slack, or, maybe Slack's a bad example. School needs to add Twitter, some audio component in order to keep up. So it's all these platforms basically just keeping up with each other. And it's become very difficult to pick one. So when people ask me, okay, like I want to start a community, but I don't know where to start, the first thing I tell them is start with where they are. So create a product that like they want the most. With Robot, we actually asked people. We said, hey, where do you want the community to live? And 47% said Discord. So we went with Discord. Didn't overthink it. Do I think we're going to be on Discord forever? Absolutely not. Because Discord is only slightly better than a Twitter or an Instagram in terms of like getting the data, right? So I think but I think building a community is so hard that it's really important for you to just like get your feet wet and see, and honestly for you just like get confidence that you like this is working. So using like, I think WhatsApp is way underrated. WhatsApp community is way underrated. Like iterate with WhatsApp communities, get people in there, get 100 people in there, iterate on the mission, iterate on the memes, iterate on the milestones, iterate on like what you want to be there. And then when you're ready, you can think of, do I want to move this over to a more purpose-built platform, like let's say school, which is like more designed for people who have like courses or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. I think we're all guilty sometimes of looking at where someone is on their path of building a community and they're maybe 100 steps ahead of us and they've got a fully built out, whether Discord community or Mighty Networks community, and there's all this different functionality. And when you're getting started in your niche, you may get guilty of kind of thinking, damn, I got to have all this functionality and all these things, when really the game is more about getting started, picking a platform, like you're saying, where people are, and then just getting in that mode of iteration and getting 1% better every day. And very similar to like nature or a tree, like it just gradually grows over time. And I've often kind of taught me the idea of just like get comfortable with taking the stairs, don't look for the elevator when building a company or building a product. And the same thing goes when you're building a community. It's just a step-by-step sort of game and you can't rush it.
Yeah, I think, when I see communities that are like growing at crazy rates, like that's unsustainable. Like you don't really want you actually don't want a community to grow like exponentially from day one. You want like a sustainable growth where every week there's a sustainable amount of people coming in, adding value, and most importantly, not making the core experience worse for the original people. So yeah, I think like it's totally okay to limit your growth in the early days, because I think that it'll help you really figure out what is your North Star and what you need to build in order to create like ultimately an incredible experience for your niche.
When you think about that tribe test, right, across like togetherness, the ritual, identity, belonging, and engagement, and you think about, scoring those on say 1 to 10 for how rich, engaging, meaningful that sense of belonging in a given community, when you're exposed to thousands of communities out there, is there like one that comes to mind as like maybe it's a hidden gem that really is maximized on that scale and really embodies those 5 principles that people may not know about?
Yeah. So funny enough, even though I forgot the I in identity, it is probably the most important one of the tribe test. People have fought wars for identity. People do very positive things for the world and very negative things in the world based on what their little voice in their head essentially says about who they are. All of us have this voice in our head, which is largely governed by identity, that essentially is this invisible hand that makes us make decisions. So if you know how to craft an identity, and create a community experience around it, you just made your job a lot easier.
And are there any kind of community-based products that, stand out to you as like really nailing that identity piece?
I mean, you can just look at religion as the OG, tribe test. Like, religion had, if you want to study community-based products, and I think you had a thread on this recently, I think the best place to start, despite if you're religious or not, is to look at how religion is structured in terms of, long-term incentives, short-term incentives, rituals, a leader or multiple leaders. There's so much there that you can actually learn from and apply it to whatever it is you're doing.
And you've been, starting and selling internet communities now for the better part of around 14 years, 5 by to Stumble Upon,
Yeah.
and, Islands to WeWork. And, there's many behind the scenes that people don't even know about that you've played an integral role in. I'm curious, startups are a marathon, not a sprint. There's ups and downs. There are treacherous times. There's horrible times and, depressing times and all that people don't even see half the time. Amongst all that and amongst all the experience you have, what are kind of like the 3 little known lessons that you have in order to kind of stay successful in the startup game and to kind of, keep your wits about you while you're dealing with, all the ups and downs?
Never send an angry email. Like, it just don't, because, and what I mean by that doesn't just mean like email. It could be a Slack message, it could mean a text message. It means that if you're in the heat of the moment, if something happens to you and it's going to happen to you, it's going to happen to you maybe even daily, around like it pushes you off your seat, like it really grinds your gears. Take a break from it. You probably don't need to answer it right away. And even if you do need to answer it right away, honestly, don't. Like, go for a walk, regain clarity, and most importantly, put yourself in their shoes and be like, why are they doing this? And even if they are being a jerk, then you go one step further and you're like, well, why are they a jerk? Like, why are they feeling this way? Oh, maybe it's because they had a really tough upbringing, or maybe they're having issues with their wife or husband. Maybe they're having health issues. Like, human beings are such complex beings that it just, some things come out in weird ways. So number one is definitely don't do something that you're going to regret, and act with kindness and love and positivity, because the world is pretty grim as is. We don't need more of that. That's one. Number two, I would say, is learn to ruthlessly prioritize. If you're in startups, you have a million things to do and not enough time. And it's really just about, knowing how to prioritize. I use things as a to-do list. I think it's like the most beautiful, not like, I wish they would sponsor me. Not sponsor or anything, but it's just like a great, beautiful product that really just gets me like excited to open a to-do list. And it doesn't need to be things, but however you have a to-do list, like make it exciting for you. Maybe it's like a beautiful notebook, or like be excited to open up your to-do list and then ruthlessly prioritize. I think that's been helpful. And then I think third is have a system for your creative engine. So what are the podcasts you listen to? What are what are your friend circles like that inspire you? Like, how do you feel after drinking coffee? Does it make it worse? Does it make it better? Like, just being mindful of like how your creativity ebbs and flows, and creating systems around that has been helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a tough thing for people to figure out early on. I know that was something that I really struggled with. You kind of initially, when I was getting started in all of this, when I was 2021, you think that you're supposed to kind of wake up early, get to work at 8 a.m. and just be creative until 7 p.m. and just put in the hours and good things happen. And then I feel like over the years, whether it's hearing from people like you, Toby Lucky at Shopify, saying that like, he only expects his employees to really have like 4 solid hours in a day. And the truth is, it's kind of like knowing those hours, knowing the patterns behind, like you're saying, that creative engine, and, to each person that's going to be unique, but being comfortable with your own flow, your own routine in order to get to those kind of deep work, creative sessions.
I've learned, I was just thinking about this morning, because I've learned that I can only write first thing in the morning for whatever reason. Like, I don't know why, but like this, something like, it will take me 25 times, literally 25 times longer to write the same 280 characters in the afternoon versus in the morning. So it's just like, I don't do it. Literally, I'm not going to write if it's after like 10 a.m. So as an example, last night I was thinking about this concept, like the unbundling of Google. I wrote it down right before I went to sleep in my notes folder, my notes file. I woke up this morning, like I let it like simmer in my brain. It simmers somehow. I don't know. I wake up, I sit down at my desk, I brewed a little cup of coffee, and I wrote in, 15 minutes max, like a quick thread on like trends that I'm paying attention to, including this unbundling of Google. That would have taken me 6 hours if I would have done it at 3 p.m. So it's being conscious of that. And just like writing, and you can even write a note to yourself, be like, I know this about myself. I know that I'm the best writer at this time. I'm the best coder at this time. I'm the best whatever at this time, knowing that about yourself and then implementing that into your schedule.
Yeah. And I've learned a similar thing more recently is, yeah, nights or afternoons are more for kind of curation, putting ideas down, going for a walk and maybe just writing an outline for something. And then, yeah, setting myself up so that those kind of sacred hours in the morning from maybe 7 a.m. till 10 a.m., I can really just drive through those outlines and actually get the writing done. Because same deal, if it's after an afternoon of meetings that I try to go and sit down and get any sort of creative work done, it's going to be just a long, hard session versus being able to do it fresh in the morning, where I think you just have the most, at least I have the most motivation. It sounds like similar to you as well.
Yeah.
I know I was watching, looking at your Twitter this morning, and I saw the thread that you're speaking of on this kind of playbook for building a niche business in 2023. I think, you've seen the kind of trend from, social to newsletter in 2022, 2023. I've seen predictions around it being kind of short form video to newsletter to community-based product. Curious kind of, for those really looking to, crush their niche, become, really a category champion in 2023. How do you kind of see maybe the 4 pillars to really owning your niche this year?
Yeah. I mean, I want to talk about short form video for a second. So short form is probably the easiest way to gain an audience in 2023, a big audience, because the platforms are designed to make that content go viral, especially Instagram Reels. So I think there's a ton of opportunity to do short form. That being said, I think that short form has gotten harder in the last like 5 months. You have to be a bit more thoughtful in terms of, are you creating a TikTok show? What is your unique, view on the world, and how can you tell it in an interesting way? So I believe that we'll continue that's a trend. Of course, short form will continue to go, but I think it'll be increasingly harder to do over the next little bit. So short form, really important. I think you're still going to see a huge opportunity in LinkedIn. Like we saw that in 22, 23, I think is just, I mean, it's massive. It's a sleeper still. And like, it's just if you're in business, you just post on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you shouldn't.
Well, it's awesome too to see, like, if you're, for those that are already building up a massive community on Twitter or using any sort of short form text on another platform, whether it's in their newsletter or in Instagram, simply just repurposing some of your best stuff and posting that once a day on LinkedIn is just a layup of a growth strategy to start kind of cross pollinating your audience to another platform there. And I think the density on LinkedIn of like legit professionals, where it's kind of a social network around, your resume, it seems like there's a higher density of like real people doing legit things than there is on Twitter, at least from my experience so far.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, it's tough because like sometimes like, speaking from the heart here, it's like sometimes I'm getting like LinkedIn requests and I'm like, are these like NPCs? Like, are these real people? Is LinkedIn just like people like accept my network invitation, like asking bots to like accept it from each other?
That's the whole
I think
game.
that, yeah, exactly. I think that the way I look at all these platforms is like 90+% of the audience you attract is going to be probably low quality value for your business. But it's really, again, going back to being mindful to look at like what's the type of content that's attracting the 10% or the 5%? And then how can I repurpose that content? Because that's really what matters. Like, you know, you, it's not, I think the mistake a lot of people make is they want to be Gary Vee. They want 5 million followers. But the problem is, I much rather, well, it's not a problem. I'd much rather 5,000 followers that are super high quality than 5 million followers. So I think you're going to start seeing that more in 2023, which is the revert back to the niche, like thinking about, what is the type of content that I can create that really, really speaks to the niche that doesn't necessarily need to go viral, but that, gets the right people talking. And the reason I think that trend is going to accelerate is because in a world where, especially on platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn, it's words. In a world where AI is essentially creating 90% of the content, you have, ChatGPT essentially writing threads. That like cookie cutter fortune teller type content is going to get really, really commoditized. So you want to double down on more interesting stories, more interesting niche stuff that really resonates with people.
Yeah. No, I'm certainly guilty of that. I mean, sometimes you can get so caught up in the numbers, the growth, the followers that you lose track of. At the end of the day, similar to products, content is out there to kind of solve people's problems. And I've recently been kind of leaning into that and doubling down into that principle, surveying the community at FounderOS and kind of understanding like what are the core problems that these people have, like phrasing those as questions, and then whether it's using short form video, threads, LinkedIn carousels, whatever, to solve those specific problems of people that are in the community, because inevitably those are the kind of people that we're looking to attract. It's not necessarily people that are into Chrome extensions. So,
right.
And similarly, it's interesting with short form video. I see a lot of people trying to figure out like, what's that one format that I'm going to go and nail with short form video? What's that one concept? And something I kind of learned over the last bit was, the thing that separated, Stephen Colbert from James Corden, who James Corden, as many know, has like blown up on YouTube over the years, is this idea that, Stephen Colbert had the kind of one content type sitting at his desk interviewing people, whereas James Corden created basically a variety show and had 8 to 10 different concepts, was experimenting with a ton of different things, and kind of kept that, that mystery, that variety, that, just changing it up a lot to just experiment with different formats versus Colbert having the one format. So I think for those people that are looking to get into short form and are not sure which, idea to run with, oftentimes I think it makes sense to try a bunch of different concepts and think about short form as more variety show than trying to focus on just one concept.
Yeah. I saw there's a guy by the name of John Yushai. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce him, but he's like he used to work at YouTube and now he has like a YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's where it's from. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so I saw that video. So it's really an interesting. Everyone should watch it. It's really interesting.
Yeah, shout out to John. That is no, thanks for that. I watched too much stuff. I'm trying to remember where all this stuff comes from.
And he I think it is interesting. I think that got me thinking too, which is like, why does a variety show work? Well, a variety show works in the same way that like a product studio like ours works, which is like you're throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall and you can kind of like double down on the thing that works. So it also attracts different niches, different audiences. So I agree with you, Matt. I think if you're trying to create short form, think about how you can create variety. And then that puts you in the position of actually, it's a year from now. Now I could decide, do I want to double down on this show, or do I want to keep it like mixed? And it puts you in a really good position.
Yeah. I'm curious, like to kind of, there's the ideation phase, owning your niche phase. Inevitably, what a lot of people are looking to do eventually with their company is eventually set it up for an exit. You've had multiple successful exits. You've even had offers you've turned down, as you recently wrote about in your newsletter, around the offer you got from Twitter, I believe back in 2021, to purchase late checkout. I'm curious, how do you think about setting your company up for a sale? And when you're kind of navigating that sale process, what are some of like the key lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, I think I might have told you this at one point. I'm pretty sure I have. So basically, like I see it as like the law of 21. There's 7 companies that probably would buy your company, and there's 3 people at those companies who could actually sponsor your deal, meaning they could actually like say, hey, we should buy this company and make it happen. Usually that's like the CEO, the head of product, or it might be the product manager in charge of that area. So your job as the maker or the founder is to get to know these 21 people as well as you can from day one. When, with Islands, which was my last company, we had a deal on the table from in December 2018, from a large company. We all thought it was going through. And then all of a sudden, like Christmas Eve, like the board decides we don't want to do this for whatever reason. And we're out of cash. And, all of a sudden I'm like funding it myself. And, that's a really bad place to be in. Luckily, I had learned that law of 21 from, I think, Dan Martell, who's another Canadian entrepreneur, many years ago. And I had built these really good relationships with a lot of target acquirers. So what I did was, January 3rd or whatever, get back to work. Everyone's getting back to work. I sent an email, like a really quick email to those, it wasn't 7 companies now, it was 6 companies. But essentially to those 6 times 3, 18 people. And it was like short and sweet. It was like, hey, I've decided I'm selling Islands. Here's the metrics. And I'm going to close this in 60 days. Do you want to chat? It was literally like a 4-line email. And from that, like we had offers on the table, and why did we have offers so quickly? It's because I had known these people for like multiple years at this point. So it wasn't like some random dude. And it was during a period where, like, if you look at the stock market in 2018, like it was a really rough year. I think the S&P closed down like 19% or something like that. So you can even do this during recession or a hard time.
Yeah, no, I love that. Love 21. Yeah, a lot of times people think, it's a much bigger number of people they got to, go and talk to, and that they maybe need a banker, but oftentimes it's a lot simpler than you think. And inevitably these things get sold based on the relationships that you have. So
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. So last question here. So there's you've talked a lot about the shift from, content creators shifting now to business creators, people looking to move beyond, an ads-based model funding their entire operation, to being able to look at, new sorts of business models and starting their own businesses, whether it's, Logan Paul starting an e-commerce brand, Prime, or Mr. Beast Burger. How do creators think about moving to business creators from your standpoint, and think about, the different business models like software, e-commerce, digital products, paid communities? What's your advice on kind of navigating that?
Yeah, I think, like one of the reasons I wrote that is because I think that creators are on this treadmill and they want to get off.
Yep.
So, I think a lot of them are going to start, instead of getting brand deals, they're going to want equity in stuff. And especially now that there's so many examples, like to your point around like people who have been successful, they're going to be like, I want that too. So the first thing, if you're a creator and you want to like brainstorm a product idea, first thing is like, what do you think, like intuitively, what do you think are the 5 products that these people would buy? Then ask your audience, or hopefully a community. If you have a community of like closed people, ask them, what are the 5 products that you'd buy? A lot of those ideas would be horrible, but synthesize it. So you have 2 lists. You have, your intuition, and then you have what your community says. From that, you prioritize it, and you prioritize, what do you, okay, like, is this a good business idea? Just because people say that they want this product doesn't mean it's a good business idea. And just because you have an idea for something doesn't mean it's a good business idea. So you prioritize based on, is this a good business idea and why? And why now? And then once you have that, go back to your community, be like, hey, this is my idea, get some feedback, iterate on that. And then I'd say prioritize based on digital over physical. And like, why? Because it's just way easier to, create a digital app or digital experience than it is to go and create the next Mr. Beast burger or Feastables or CPG, Prime type company with logistics and manufacturing, suppliers, FDA approval, you name it. It's just not that simple. So I would recommend that, creators start with digital at least, and they can move to CPG and stuff like that. But it's just so much easier to start digital once you've built the confidence of like, wow, I did a thing, I built this thing. Then you can expand to physical. And I want to say one more thing, which is it's really difficult for a creator to then like basically be a creator and then be a CEO. So I think what's going to happen is, or I think it's worth considering creators like partner with someone to go and build those.
Yeah. No, it's two different mindsets. Yeah. And inevitably, I think a lot of creators have that kind of competitive advantage and, being able to double down and, producing amazing content, thinking of unbelievable ideas. And if you can just kind of focus in that lane and drive that, and then find someone to manage the business operation side of things, your growth and likely your happiness is likely to increase from that level of focus. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I want to thank you, Greg, for making the time here. I want to also thank you big time for all your help scaling Herb over the years. And even recently, I'm sure no one knows, but now they might. You're the guy that named Founder OS because we were about to name it Founder Operating Systems, and then Greg swooped in. So I want to thank you for all your help on the community side over the years. And for those that are looking to check out more from Greg, be sure to go and hit his Twitter link in the description. Check out the newsletter for late checkout there as well. The best newsletter in the world on community-based products. And for anyone looking for proven systems to scale their brand and audience, go check out the Founder OS newsletter in the description below. Thanks so much, Greg.